Welcome to the Democracy's College podcast series. This podcast focuses on educational equity, justice, and excellence for all students in P20 educational pathways. This podcast is a product of the Office of Community College Research and Leadership, or OCCRL, at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Learn more about OCCRL at occrl.illinois.edu. In this episode, Dr. Anjalé Welton from OCCRL talks with Dr. Linda Tillman, Professor Emerita of Educational Leadership at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, about cultivating the gifts and talents of faculty of color.
Hello, this is Anjalé Welton. I am Dean's Fellow for Faculty Development and Diversity Initiatives for the College of Education here at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And I am here today chatting with Dr. Linda Tillman, Professor Emerita from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Welcome.
Thank you.
The first question that I have for you is, in your talk that you gave today at the University of Illinois, you defined racial equity in higher education. So how would you define racial equity, especially as it pertains to faculty of color?
So if you consider race as being race and ethnicity, then you have white people, you have black people, Asian people, Asian being a very broad category, Latino being a very broad category. Mm-hmm. And if you have racial equity in higher ed, it means that everyone in the higher ed community is treated equally. Everyone in the higher ed community is valued. There is no more value placed on one race than there is on another race, because when you do that, then that leaves faculty of color out in most predominantly white institutions. So I'm positing the theory of racial equity to say that if we have an equitable society, as professors, as administrators, students, members of the educational community, then equity would mean that everyone is treated equally. Everyone has the same opportunities.
In terms of equity, my next question for you, in your talk that you gave today about cultivating the gifts of faculty of color, you said that faculty of color have to work within white norms. At predominantly white institutions, they have to work within white norms, and their scholarship is judged based on white norms. So what do universities need to do to normalize their work to align with faculty of color? I mean, how do they need to change their structures to recognize the work of faculty of color?
Well, one thing they need to do is realize that, as Dr. Bill Trent has said, because a faculty member of color may choose to do a particular kind of work and center it around race, that doesn't mean that the field itself has changed. So, for instance, I'm in K-12 educational leadership, but I choose to do my work based on the lives and experiences of black students, black teachers, black principals, parents. But that doesn't mean that I have abandoned my content knowledge of K-12 education, K-12 leadership. So in order to sort of normalize that, there doesn't need to be a white norm. There shouldn't be anything called a white norm or that other people have to conform to do their work. Because if they aren't white, then that's going to be a foreign territory for them in the first place. Most of us write sort of based on our racial and cultural biography, and that sort of influences our work. And so if you don't have a white norm as your racial and cultural biography, then most people are not going to write like that. So the universities, I think, need to accept that there are multiple forms of how people can produce their scholarship, and it can be based on their racial and cultural norms, or racial and cultural norms of a particular group.
So my next question for you is, how can white faculty advocate for and support faculty of color, especially at predominantly white institutions?
Well, I think it would probably be unrealistic to think that all white faculty will advocate and support faculty of color. Clearly, on campuses, there are white faculty who do not appreciate the gifts and talents of faculty of color, and they probably may not be used to working with faculty of color. But there are white faculty on campuses who have had students of color. They collaborated with scholars of color. They've served on committees. They have a background in working with scholars of color. And I believe it's incumbent upon them, as well as everyone else, to support faculty of color, advocate for them, and when they see that faculty of color are being treated less than humane, that they speak up about that. As should be expected, many junior faculty and graduate students will be afraid to challenge white faculty who are senior to them. They will be somewhat reticent about telling those faculty members that they're being treated less than kindly, because they may fear that it's going to hurt their career, or down the tenure line they'll get a bad review, or something negative. But I don't think that should be the case either. So if faculty really believe that people are human beings, then if you're treating them in inhumane ways, if you're constantly throwing microaggressions at them, if you're diminishing their work, if you're criticizing how they do their work, what kind of work they do, and if you're making the college and the department an unwelcoming place for them, then those faculty who believe that's wrong and know that's wrong should speak up and support. And additionally, if white faculty or other faculty are in positions to help faculty of color in terms of publishing, in terms of service work, in terms of grants, in terms of committees on campus, or things that would bring attention to the faculty member in turn and enhance their work, then certainly they ought to be a part of that as well. They ought to encourage faculty. They ought to recommend them. They may want to read drafts. They may want to ask them to participate in writing projects or on grants. So, there are various ways that they can enhance the productivity of faculty of color and to make them feel that they are part of the scholarly community.
So what key advice do you have for graduate students of color who are interested in entering academia?
I would say that they need to do their research first, and you can do research sort of informally. I think the best way is to become involved in any graduate student activity that provides information for you about being a professor. For instance, with UCEA, we have the Jackson Scholars in Division A. We have the graduate student dialogic sessions. We have Clark seminars. We have all kinds of committees that graduate students can serve on that all provide some information about being a professor. They need to be able to network effectively with scholars, both junior scholars and senior scholars. They need to attend any workshop that helps you write a vita, helps you with interviewing, because the interview is very non-traditional. It's not like you're going to go work for the state of Illinois. And so you have to be able to talk to numerous people over a 2 or 3 day period. You've got to be able to present your work effectively in your job talk. You've got to be able to dialogue with the search committee, other members of the faculty, students. And so any information, any training that a graduate student can get prior to entering the job market is going to be very valuable. But that networking, that making connections, that getting a writing project under your belt before you enter the professoriate is are all things that will sort of enhance how you start out, because how you start out in the academy is so important.
It really matters. Yeah.
It's very important to you.
I remember you said get those dissertation articles out, those first couple,
those first 3
before you start the faculty job.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So once you get a faculty job as a faculty of color, how do you stay sane and practice self-care as a faculty of color navigating the academy and the tenure and promotion process?
I think all faculty, whether it's faculty of color or white faculty, once it becomes a big part of your personality. So it's a big part of your life. And most of us are going to stay sane when we get published. I mean, that's a big jolt of energy for us. It's a big confidence booster. We got something published, and so now we know, okay, I can do this. I didn't think I could do this, but I can do this. And so you stay sane by continuing to be in the scholarly community, continuing to network, continuing to go to those meetings. I've been at it a while, and I'm full and been full for a long time. And I just get so energized when I go to AERA. You see all your friends, you meet new people, you hear about new and interesting research, you get, somebody asks you to be a part of a writing project, join them on a grant or join them on a presentation. Those are the kind of things that keep you going, keep your confidence level up. And also, I think, working with students, if you like working with students, even though it's hard work and you still have to balance that against your, publishing, if you like working with students, then after you've had a summer's break, you're going to be energized about going back. The self-care aspect is you have to make yourself take vacations, make yourself take time off, and have something other to do than just be a faculty member. If your whole existence is being a faculty member, then I think most people will get burnt out that way. I mean, you got to have something else that interests you that you do on a regular basis, whether it's being in a book club, being in a girls club, or you're in a fraternity or sorority, or your church, or you work in the community. Whatever it is you do, you still have to continue to do that so that you have something else that provides you with an outlet. And then when you feel like you're getting just too stressed, then you just need to back off. Sometimes you have to take a writing break. I mean, sometimes you really do. And people write differently. So, I can get up at 8 in the morning and stay up till 2 in the morning and maybe do that for like 5 days at a time. But then, of course, I'm ready to fall over when it's over with. But that's just how I write. So then after that, I go do something.
I go to bed early and I wake up at like 3 a.m. and I write.
Oh, my goodness. I'd never be able to do that. I tried it once, but I never could do that. But I'll do something like watch The Godfather. But you have to make sure that, you got a balance in there, that there's something else that you do.
And my final question for you, I know you always tell me your stories about starting out and what you wish you would have known starting out. So in hindsight, what advice would you give yourself when you started out in academia?
That I would have had publications when I got out of grad school, or at least 1 or 2. But when I got out of grad school, there wasn't the emphasis on having the publications going in. I also wish that methodologically, I'm a qualitative researcher. And I also wish that I had honed my skills in quantitative as well. I really think that, and people disagree on this, so my sort of orientation, theoretical or conceptual orientation, is definitely qualitative. But you still need quantitative data. And I wish that I had paid more attention to quantitative courses so that I would have been a little more well-rounded in terms of my methodological skills. And also that I had been forced to get an article out before I lived. Because the sooner you learn how to write for publishing, the better you are. There's a big difference in writing a dissertation and writing a peer-reviewed journal article.
And if you have things out already before you start that job, that faculty job, when you get that faculty job, there's so many other things that you have to worry about getting
so
adjusted.
At least you have a head start on that. Because the time it takes you to get started on your writing and to figure out when you get your rhythm and when you can do it, could be a long time.
Is there anything else I haven't asked that you think needs to be discussed for this podcast?
No, I don't think so. I think people need to cultivate mentoring relationships. They need to take advantage of opportunities people give them, even though it may be something else to do. Think about the long-term goals of this. Even though it's one more thing for me to sort of manage, it's one more thing to add to my vita, to add to my promotion and tenure dossier, one more thing that makes me look really good if I should decide to look for a different job or when I'm just starting out. So, a well-rounded group of activities, publishing, service work, networking.
I know interdisciplinary as well.
Right.
Having your work speak to
other fields
seems to be more important now as well.
Right. So it's not just does it speak to leadership people, but does it speak to people who are sociologists or school psychologists? So my 2002 article, Culturally Sensitive Research, is used an awful lot in the health field.
Really?
Yes. So the first article that I noticed that was published was in a diabetes research study of African Americans. How do you conduct studies in African American communities doing diabetes research? And then some nurses at San Francisco State used it in a study of teen pregnancy.
So when you went up for promotion, did you articulate that in your...
So that's been interesting because every now and then I'll still get an article that was written by someone in the healthcare field. Mental health, nursing, the EPA, talking about doing research in communities, diabetes research. So that's been interesting that it's been used in the healthcare field.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Tillman. If you would like to watch and listen to my mentor, Dr. Linda Tillman's talk, which was part of the Dean's Diversity Lecture Series titled Racial Equity in Higher Education, Cultivating the Gifts and Talents of Faculty of Color, you can find the link to the video of her talk on the same page as this podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For more information about cultivating the gifts and talents of faculty of color, we recommend that you visit Dr. Linda Tillman's website at the University of North Carolina for a list of publications. For more podcasts, links to today's recommended resources, or to share your comments and suggestions, visit occrl.illinois.edu/democracy or send them via Twitter at OCCRL. Tune in for this month's bonus episode when Dr. Heather Fox from OCCRL talks with Dr. Helen Byrne from Highland College about equity-minded approaches to mathematics education. Background music for this podcast is provided by DubLab. Thank you for listening and for your contribution to educational equity, justice, and excellence for all students.